Oh, sorry, wrong background. If you subscribe to my channel for the Dune videos, which have done way better than my normal ones in terms of views and subscribers, you might feel a bit of whiplash. Maybe you subscribe to understand the themes of sci-fi or films or books or something like that, and here you get smacked in the face with a bit of right-wing political discussion. But I'm afraid that's what you need to sign up for. My main focuses are politics, philosophy, and economics from a right-wing, libertarian, Austrian school and Catholic neo-reactionary perspective, all of the above mixed into one. And part of that is libertarianism and Hoppeanism. Why do I title this video to say I'm still a libertarian? What does this still mean? Well, being a libertarian was once quite trendy, and now it's not. It peaked in terms of social capital and political capital around the times of the Tea Party in America, Donald Trump's election in 2016, and Brexit over here at the same time. It fell quite easily out of trend because I'm of the belief that it is the safest radical opinion or political position to have, which isn't left-wing. So if you are not a left-wing oriented person, which is to say you aren't an envious, deformed freak, and you are feeling yourself become politically radicalized by the increasingly disgusting, debased, debaucherous, and just insane political systems of the modern world, then you'll probably go through at least a libertarian phase. That's how most people would describe it. And I talked about this myself many years ago in a video talking about the pipeline, as it's called, from libertarian to alt-right, which is a YouTube-safe euphemism for the N-word and the F-word, which have fun guessing which of those words I'm referring to. But there is a reason for it, and it's to do with, I just think, the nature of radicalism. I say it all the time, that if your views wouldn't get you fired from your job, they wouldn't make your HR department lose all the color in their face out of fear, then you're not radical. And that's not just some sort of safe, edgy, contrarian thing. HR departments are a function of the cathedral. They are part of the consensus forming and enforcement mechanism of the progressive regime, the total state. You can walk into your HR department and lay down a bunch of libertarian theory. You can say to your HR ladies, I want the abolition of all tax and the abolition of all gun laws. And they'd say, all right, you're a bit weird, but you're wasting my time. Can you go back to work, please? If you went in there and said, I am against homosexual marriage because it's an unnatural abomination, you'll be packing up your things within the next hour. And this matters, I think. It's easy to view some of those things as containment if they are radical, yet not threatening to the regime. I believe that to be radical, you need to be against the substance of the regime, not just its accidental qualities. The fact that the regime has a state doesn't mean you can just rage against the state. You need to rage against the substance of the regime, or else you're not a radical. And the proof is in the pudding with that HR example. And why am I talking about this now? Because I have made a firm effort for years to be both right-wing and libertarian. It sounds strange to say it because if you are a Hoppean, such as myself, those two things not only complement, they are the other things. To be right-wing is to be libertarian, and to be libertarian is to be right-wing. Hopper has a whole book on this, which I'm going to quote fairly soon, called Getting Libertarianism Right, written in 2018, just around about the time of libertarianism peaking in terms of trend, and just before I came into being a libertarian, which really started, I think, in 2019 at the start of the year. And I wouldn't read Hopper for another couple years, I don't think. It's very easy and safe to be a libertarian and still go along with all of the social progressive nonsense that I was going along with, despite being against laws in the state and being an anarchist and things like that. You can still easily, as a libertarian, be psyoped, corralled, and contained within the regime if you don't stand against its fundamental moral principles. And I'm making this today as the story is raging of the murder of Irina Zatruska, a Ukrainian refugee on a train in North Carolina stabbed in the neck 3 times in a completely random, racially motivated attack by a black man, and I'm using this to demonstrate that now is, if you are a libertarian, now is not the time to step away from the right. You need to be completely on the side against this sort of thing. If you are, let's say, a capitalist, Austrian economist of that persuasion, you should be pro-white. As Hopper says right here, about the left-wing view. Also suspect, unnatural, and in need of repair are all exclusive associations, societies, congregations, churches, and clubs, and all territorial segregation, separation, and secession, whether based on class, gender, race, ethnicity, lineage, language, religion, profession, interests, customs, or tradition. Worth remembering, he is saying that about the progressive regime. He goes on to say, from that vantage point, the victim groups and their victimizers are easily identified. As it turns out, victims make up the vast majority of mankind. Everyone and every conceivable group is a victim, except that small part of mankind composed of white, including Northern Asian, heterosexual males living traditional bourgeois family lives. They, and especially the most creative and successful ones among them, excluding interestingly only rich sports or entertainment celebrities, are the victimizers of everyone else. So if you're a libertarian, do you have to kneel for George Floyd? I made videos at the time coming out against Daniel Chauvin and against police brutality because that does seem like the path of least resistance from a libertarian legal theory. This also relates to another previous video I've made called Most Libertarians Don't Understand Philosophy, which is that libertarianism, in its broad sense, is just a legal theory, saying that you should not be allowed to aggress on a person or their legitimate property. Robert Conquest's second law of politics says that anything which is not explicitly right-wing will become left-wing. Now, libertarianism in that different definition I just gave is explicitly right-wing through just property. But that does not mean that the social forces and the people directing them of the progressive regime won't try and disarm and defang the movement to make it contained. And a lot of people, as they grow in radicalization, encounter more and more contained libertarians and come to believe that libertarianism itself is containment. I'm talking about the Cato Institute, Reason Magazine. If you are a libertarian, you know exactly the kind that I am getting at. That becomes many people on the right's view of what libertarianism is. So I've made it my mission for years to stand completely against that, to be right-wing and libertarian, to talk to both wider camps, and to absolutely brook no tolerance whatsoever of left-wing ideas. And the right is on the rise. I'm seeing so much utter rage from the American white right over the murder of Irina, and it's very similar to what happened in the UK last summer during what's called the Southport riots, where the murder of Irina happened to 3 girls at once, and many more stabbed, changed them and their families changed for life by an anti-white monster. If libertarians are silent on these things, then they are complicit in it, and the worst part is there is no reason to be silent. There is absolutely no reason as a libertarian to cower away from these questions, which cut right to the bone of the regime's principles. Hopper says again, is libertarian theory compatible with the worldview of the right? And is libertarianism compatible with leftist views? As for the right, the answer is an emphatic yes. Every libertarian only vaguely familiar with social reality will have no difficulty acknowledging the fundamental truth of the rightist worldview. He can, and in light of the empirical evidence indeed must, agree with the right's empirical claim regarding the fundamental not only physical but also mental inequality of man. And he can in particular also agree with the right's normative claim of laissez-faire, i.e. that this natural human inequality will inevitably result also in unequal outcomes and that nothing can or should be done about this. My broader political view is that a radical right-wing power change is going to happen. This simply cannot stand for much longer. I defer to Oscar Spengler's view of Caesarism and have said this for years, that the position Western society finds itself in is very similar to the late Roman Republic. Either we're going to collapse, or one man, is going to seize it with an iron fist and change it according to his will. That's not going to be a libertarian, that man. That's just simply not the constitution of Caesar. So what is our job as libertarians looking to the future? We are enemies of the regime. You must be an enemy of the regime, and you must find fellow traveler enemies of the regime and not make yourself enemies of them as far as you can help it. I've spent years trying to navigate these waters with the idea in mind that someone is going to come and fix all of this. We're not going to vote our way out of this. Politicians aren't going to bring us out of this. But when that man comes, how are we going to direct him in the best possible way? Are we going to stand in his way and be killed as well and make an enemy of the regime for no good reason? Or do we try and make the best of that situation and try and get things such as an end of fiat money, an end of gun laws, an end of taxation as much as we can? Or do we just cry? Do we cry and get ourselves killed? I'd rather not do that one. So let's look at the actual solutions that the radical right is pushing, and that I think they're going to get their way sooner rather than later, one way or another. The big one is remigration. Politics for the last 20 years in at least Britain and most of Europe has been about migration. Whatever party you're voting for, it's always really described, where do you stand on immigration? I got a coffee the other day, and the barista was a young woman. She was only just old enough to vote at the last general election, the one where Labour won. And her colleague was saying to her, who are you voting for? She didn't really answer the question, but I noticed the only answer she was giving was about immigration. She was saying, you know, I'd like to vote for the Lib Dems. I'd like to vote for the Liberal Democrats, but there are just too many people coming into this country. You need to understand that's the frame of mind that everyone is thinking about politics right now. And the radical right wants one thing: foreigners out. What are we doing about it as libertarians? What are we adding to this conversation? Well, it's not difficult. We've got so many answers. Chief among them is welfare and the fact that the state has imported these people. These aren't people coming here to make a better life. Look at everything that they're given. I don't even need to go into the stats. We all know them. We all know how many thousands of, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds, if not millions of foreign people have come into the Western world to just be given so much on a platter, so much money taken from, as Hopper called them, the white heterosexual males living traditional bourgeois family lives. They are these successful, tax-paying, productive people in white countries, and they're being robbed to fund their own replacement. How can we be silent on this? We've been talking about the main root cause, which is government policy, for way longer than these people have been radicalized. Why are we not putting the foot down on the pedal as hard as we can? Take, for example, what are known as the Rotherham rape gangs. These were Muslim Pakistani families where hundreds, if not thousands, if maybe even tens of thousands of these Muslim Pakistani men were coordinating human trafficking and kidnapping of white girls to torture, drug, and rape them for years. Tens of thousands of innocent white girls victimized by this. What do you reckon the overlap of those people is, and their families and dependents who knew about this and therefore were complicit in the crime? How many tens of thousands, if not millions of people are we talking about? What do you think the crossover is of how many of them are the recipients of state welfare? How many of them subsist off of the welfare taken from white traditional heterosexual family men? You. If you're watching this video, that's likely you, statistically speaking. So what are we doing? Why are we staying quiet? Why are we ever cozying up to the left? Why are we ever attacking Donald Trump from the left instead of the right and saying, what are you doing bombing Israel? What the hell are you doing bombing Israel? How are you America first if the US Air Force might as well be commanded by the IDF? How's that right wing? How's that America first? How's that pro-white? It's none of those things, and it's anti-libertarian. What do you know? So does that show you what I'm getting at? Why am I still a libertarian? There's no reason not to be. None of the incoming solutions of the radical right needs to conflict with libertarianism. They will only do so if libertarians make an enemy out of the radical right, who are their fellow travelers, who want the same problems fixed. Absolutely does my head in that people think we still need to cater to leftist worldviews or leftist power structures. You don't. You need to, now is critical. You need to be allying with the right, or you're going to be their enemy when they come into power for no good reason. And I think another problem that the wider libertarian sphere has, and this, by the way, is why I don't call myself a libertarian before I call myself a Hoppean. You have to have wider context towards the term libertarian, because it can mean so many things, including meaning a person who has a bunch of nice little legal theories but no actual vision for society. How would your society organize? Who would it be consisted of? How would it deal with threats? Yes, there's books on all of these things, books by Mises Institute writers, so we're back in the same sphere that I'm talking about. But you need quick and easy answers for these sorts of things. And that's why for years, I, like Hopper, have praised the Holy Roman Empire. This is a European confederation of principalities, city-states, kingdoms, which lasted for over 1,000 years, the longest living social body in history. And we can hold it up as a torch and say, no, we have historical, real examples of large-scale mass societies, which are, if they don't follow our principles, man, they come close, and they come closer than anything has in history. You need to be talking about things such as hierarchy, social cohesion, homogeneity, and trust. If you're not talking about these things, you are going to make yourself an enemy yet again. And all of it is incredibly important to libertarianism, or at least Hoppeanism, which is correct. And so I get a lot of flack from both libertarians and the right. I recently had a YouTube comment on my video about the feudalism of Dune, saying, you're clearly not a libertarian anymore, and I think it's because you're a Catholic and it's made you all sorts of radical. Because I said that feudalism was one of the closest systems we've seen to the natural order, except for treating humans like quasi-property. I said it right there in the video, that humans being treated as similar to property by being tied to land and therefore forced into contracts against their will. I said I'm not defending that. That's the worst part of feudalism. It's not perfect, and there was many feudal systems without that. But apparently I'm not a libertarian anymore because I'm using historical examples that Hopper uses. Does my freaking head in, man. But I also get shit from the right. Why am I a libertarian? Why am I not X, Y, or Z? Most of the time, they don't even have a category. It's just, why are you a libertarian? That's an enemy group. That's the view they have of it. So you have to give more context to it with something like Hoppeanism. But that brings me to, well, my life would be a lot easier if I wasn't libertarian in terms of this, content or thinking and discussion or discourse, whatever you want to call it, these sorts of groups, this sort of action. If I wasn't a libertarian, it would be a lot easier. I wouldn't have to deal with a lot of the libertarians who do my head in, who I think are not well-adjusted people for the most part. I don't say this to disparage. There's plenty of people that I talk to that we have massive mutual respect, that have known me for years and have developed ideas alongside me. There's lots and lots of them. But then there's ones that I've never heard of and they've never spoken to me before, that will come out of the woodwork and just say utterly ridiculous things and make an enemy of me for no reason the first time I've ever interacted with them. If I didn't have to deal with those people, that would be a lot easier. And if I didn't have to deal with the right viewing me with some sense of suspicion, that would be a lot easier. So why can I not? Why can I not let go of it? The chief one is argumentation ethics. It comes down to philosophy at the end of the day. I won't explain what argumentation ethics is, but you can Google it, and I'm sure someone could give a good quick steel man in the comments. But it is Hans Hermann Hopper's linguistic, philosophical, definitive proof of property rights, starting with man as owner and controller of his own body and faculties. I can't debunk it. I've never seen it being done. Seen people try. No one has successfully debunked argumentation ethics. The sheer veracity of that idea, it's handcuffed me. I can't do anything else but follow it. There is also what I think is libertarianism's best analytical weapon, which is so sadly misunderstood and misrepresented. That's methodological individualism. I'm not talking about social individualism. I'm not talking about atomization and the degradation of trust and the degradation of groups the hatred of one's own race or group or people. None of that. Methodological individualism is a fantastic way of disarming so much of the leftist, Whiggish view of society. Not long ago, I made a post on Twitter talking about the kind of people who are anti-imperialism because that inflicts on a group of people's land, property, and resources. But mass migration, oh, that's fine, which does exactly the same thing. And I had a communist, unsurprisingly, a flat-out Marxist, say, immigration is what people do, imperialism is what institutions do. And the immediate, straight to the jugular, cutting out the bullshit from that is my response, which I'll paraphrase, was something like, what's the magical formula that allows these institutions to work without people then? If immigration is what people do, and imperialism is what institutions do, are these institutions some sort of advanced general intelligence? Are they AGI that they can work without human input? Or are institutions just groups of people organizing and acting? Yeah, it's that. And you can actually use methodological individualism to cut through so much rubbish of the left. Things like being against the great man theory of history. Liberalism, a term that I'm just going to use colloquially forever, I think. You know what I mean when I say it. Liberalism hates strong men. And the fact of the matter is, history is made by strong men acting and forcing their will onto the world. People like Napoleon and Caesar, who I've already talked about. The liberal or the leftist academic says, no, those men did not change history. Forces and trends did. Who influences forces and trends? These people are mostly atheists, but when it comes to human action, they're the most creationist, interventionist, theocrats ever. They think that some god is just magically organizing all of these trends without human input. Methodological individualism, with that in mind, cut through the bullshit straight away. No, people act according to incentives and people will get around things that they want to get around. A lot of libertarians will say things like, you can't ban drugs because people will always want drugs and so they'll find a way to get them. Well, let's bring this into the economic sphere now. What is Palantir? Peter Thiel's baby. This man who was made in a CIA lab. Palantir was a department of the CIA until it got privatized. Why did it get privatized? Because the CIA, as part of the state, needs to have some sort of transparency, even if only towards other parts of the state rather than the public. If you privatize Palantir, well, now you're not held by all of these checks and balances that have been built into the democratic system over decades with these politicians whose only job it is to make laws, coming up with laws. They try and control the power of government departments and put checks and balances on them. But government departments are made up of people, and these people act according to incentives, just like drug addicts do. And these people therefore find ways to get around the restrictions. Methodological individualism can also help you to avoid a trap that so many libertarians get themselves in and therefore damage the reputation of libertarianism amongst the whole right wing, which is defending pseudo-private institutions. Any libertarian who ever goes out of their way to bat for companies, in quotes, companies, like Palantir and BlackRock, you're not a libertarian. You're just a Keynesian. You're another part of the system. In order to be sufficiently radically libertarian, your economic policy doesn't have to just be, I want to get rid of fiat currency or I want to get rid of income tax. You need to recognize that the entire business structure of the whole world is wrong. And when you find people who rage against institutions that make themselves look private but aren't, if you jump to the defense of those pseudo-private institutions, you are an enemy. And you are contained by the regime. Your radicalism in economics never needs to let up. You need to be constantly pushing on it. And this is completely in line with what someone like Rothbard would always say. The point of being for markets and Austrian economics and against fiat currency is not for the purpose of efficiency. We don't care how efficient it is. We don't care if it makes people rich. We don't care about the distribution of wealth that it creates. All we care about is that it's right. So don't ever go defending the ultra wealthy and the biggest corporations in the world. In fact, most corporations, even most small to medium businesses, are corrupt. They're products of the state. They can't live without it and they benefit from it. You need to take a holistic view at all of Western society and say it's nearly all gone wrong. And then you need to have the question of, well, when did it start going wrong? Was it the 90s? Was it the progressive era in the 1920s? Or was it all the way back to the early modern period, the 15th, 16th centuries? Well, think about that for a minute. If what we are angry against is the modern regime or modernism as an idea, you need to be looking a lot further back to see when it went wrong than you probably already are. And when you look that far back, I guarantee when you look at these feudal societies, you'll find them to be a hell of a lot more libertarian than the modern ones. Now, you can probably tell this is one of the rare videos where I didn't use a script, so it's very ranty, it's very back and forth. I'd love some feedback if you think that I'm just talking absolute nonsense, if you think that this is so undirected that it's hard to follow, or if you'd like to see more of the same. I imagine old subscribers are happy to see a return to just explicit ranting about politics, economics, and philosophy. And for new subscribers, I do once again apologize if you feel misled, but sorry, you're going to have to sign up to a lot of going back and forth in terms of content styles. Thank you all for your time. If you'd like to support me, there are two main ways to do that. You could buy me a coffee at the buymeacoffee.com website. That's preferred because I also have YouTube memberships, which are also greatly appreciated, but YouTube takes a huge cut out of those. Although I am trying to come up with ideas of members-only content, so you could see some development on that in the future. So aside from that, take it easy.